Ahoy there, this is Zaefnyr, and this is an MMO.
And you might be wondering what the hell is going on, but basically a lot of AoEs.
You know, the kind of game that acts as your second job, where the average player comes home from their 9 to 5 and proceeds to flip the trading post for hours on end so as to satisfy their filthy rich fantasy in a somewhat player-controlled economy. Money can't buy power in this game, however. It's a good thing, I'll explain later. Guild Wars 2 first launched in 2012. However, I started playing it on the 5th of July 2016, so anything prior to that is irrelevant. I still enjoy the world completion content, however. One would think that it's very much like Far Cry, clearing outposts, unlocking radio stations. It's all mindless fun and can be compared to what Guild Wars 2 offers new players as the initial experience with its world and gameplay. Here you need to find points of interest, waypoints, complete hearts, which are a much better alternative to the average MMORPG fetch quest, and watch vistas in order to get map completion rewards. Beautiful Kildom Forest.
Kildom Forest has 4 jumping puzzles in 1 mini dungeon, Jack. And I love jumping puzzles.
I played through Heart of Thorns after leveling my first character all those years ago. It's the first expansion and the map meta events are still relevant to this day. Do you want to craft legendary armor via raids? Well, good luck getting provisional tokens without doing the Tarir panic meta. You want quick access to gear other than direct damage? Well, have fun doing Verdant Brink meta, as bladed armor has a large selection of stat combinations and you need the map currency to buy that. The idea is that old content stays relevant for very long. Even maps from before the first expansion still see a lot of play due to the amount of achievements which require completing an event from ore or doing certain world bosses in even lower level areas. Best thing about this is that the higher level characters are downscaled to the map's regional levels, so you can always play with your noob friends even though you're decked out in shiny shoe polish. Your gear also stays relevant despite the new content drops. Can you believe that an MMORPG with continuous support, new expansions, new content, developers who listen to the feedback from their game's community, has gear that remains relevant after a decade of existing? I kid you not, the gear with the Berserker's prefix is still used in the meta builds for power DPS or direct damage. Each new expansion brings new stat combinations for gear, so new builds appear, but that only means that the Viper's prefix gear used for Condi DPS or damage over time has been meta since 2015 instead of 2012. Remember when I said that money doesn't buy power? Well, you only need exotic gear to do all content in the game except for high tier fractals. Those require ascended or legendary gear for the agony resistance infusions for certain mechanics. Ascended and legendary gear have the exact same stats, and exotic gear is pretty much 90% of ascended stats, so gearing is not an issue at all. To quote Josh Strife Hayes, Guild Wars 2 respects your time. You log in to play Barbie dress up, not slave away to the farming gods in hopes of getting gear that somewhat fits the minimum quota for endgame content in the current season. You can, however, farm if you want. More on that later. Speaking of Barbie dress up, there are many people who are inclined to believe, myself included, that this game's true name is Fashion Wars. Playing fractals, which are this game's endgame version of dungeons, to unravel past mysteries in the mists, I digress. Playing raids to get better at understanding this game's mechanics and have a better perception of the world's lore and characters, I refuse to do such thing. Playing PvP or World vs World in order to test my reaction times and understanding of my class against other players, I scoff. I log onto the game, go to the bank wardrobe and spend hours on end testing locked and unlocked skins, and whenever I get a cute outfit for my cute little bunny boy that I like, I venture forth to unlock all the necessary achievements in order to receive the much beloved armor skins and transmute them onto my boys and girls. This look right here. I spent 3 or 4 hours on the clock checking the skins only to dye it all a single color and rename the character Breaking Bad theme. Do you get it? It's because she's orange, just like the Mexico filter from Albuquerque, New Mexico. This big boy over here got his sex appeal from doing achievements in the Season 4 of Living World Story and some core game skins. Naturally, the only name I could come up with for him was Thick and Proud. I don't know how that name was not taken at the time. Usually, female humans are the meta when it comes to fashion, as they are the quickest to out-DPS their rivals. However, I prefer dressing up Sylvari, as their colorful and night-glowing skins make for extremely easy and quick gamer-tested RGB outfits. Especially when using their cultural armor, which changes color based on the Sylvari's skin color. Cultural armor for the uninitiated is the armor available only for a certain race. There have always been only 3 tiers of cultural armor, so don't worry, ArenaNet mostly makes skins widely available. And what's the next best thing to do in an MMORPG other than dressing up your characters? No, of course it's not combat, that's the third best thing. It's chatting with your fellow gamers about all sorts of inane, pointless things. I even crossed the border towards roleplaying, and I'm here to say it's not really any more important to talk about the gem store chair you're sitting on than about the coming of the end times in LA. Although, The people who join in the end times arguments are much more fun to observe than role players. If you haven't figured it out already, I'm calling this game a glorified chat room. Did I ever feel lonely? Yeah, and of course, my one and only fix to that loneliness was to fire up Guild Wars 2 and offer my unasked for opinions in map chat, only to see people's reactions as if I were a bored teenage boy with nothing better to do. Most of my time in this game, I actually was a bored teenage boy with nothing better to do, which only reinforces the point I'm making here. Play Guild Wars 2, argue about pointless things with strangers on the internet, annoy the people AFKing at the bank with your stupid legendary unicorn sounds as if you were a baboon with enough poop to lob at passersby. Stay free, gamers. If you do not like the idea of being such one free individual with highly intellectual pursuits such as annoying the villagers of Lion's Arch, you can dedicate yourself to one of the 3 game modes in Guild Wars 2. The Industrial Revolution and all of its consequences might lead you down the path of PvE, sPvP, world versus world. One is not like the other. PvE, if you've ever played an MMO before, you'd know that is basically you killing AI, defeating normal mobs and bosses for rewards. In Guild Wars 2, that is correct and true, especially for the 2 endgame PvE content modes. Raids and Fractals. Fractals are the 5-player short dungeons which you can do daily for extra rewards. You can also do the simple PvE dailies for 10 achievement points and 2 gold pieces, consisting of learning basic game geography to know where in the specific world zones you have to chop wood, mine, or forage. Anyway, in Fractals you go through a bunch of short maps with short stories about the past, then you fight a boss at the end and move on to the next Fractal of the Mists. Raids have extra weekly rewards, are longer than Fractals on average, and bosses featured in this game mode have much more complex mechanics. They're not exactly punishing enough to wipe your entire team, but you will feel very bad if you leech. People are mostly nice about it and leave the group with no insults when they notice I'm failing cogs, or actually try to help you out if you're slightly confused. Unless, of course, you join a raid training squad, in which case the only point there is to make is to learn the raid mechanics. There is a third PvE farming method, however. This one is neither daily nor weekly. It's the closest thing to traditional MMORPG farming methods. You basically go to the Fast Farming community website, check which map has the highest amounts of profit per hour, then you go there to do the maps events, and generally sell what you get from the events. I crafted my first legendary weapon by farming silver wastes, and because you're here to listen to me ramble about ways to slave yourself in this game by initiating your farming brain modules, this is how you silver waste farm. You go to this map called the Silver Wastes. Ironic, I know. Capture the 4 forts you need to defend in this order: red, indigo, blue, and amber, then rotate between defending each fort in this exact order, giving us the name of Reba farming. From each event completed consecutively, you can see here on the map what you get. Those bags of gear, once you have enough of them, you need to send them to a character that's level 49 to 53. Now open the bags of gear on said character, and you will notice that instead of the level 80 unidentified gear, you now get a level relevant gear. Salvage this lower level gear and notice that you get iron ore and hard wood instead of mithril ore and elder wood. Since everyone plays at level 80, no one naturally gets these lower tier materials, so they sell for double or triple the price on the trading post. Post a selling offer or instantly sell, and voila, you've made yourself $3 for half a cup of coffee. Let's talk sPvP and World vs. World for a second though. The best thing about this game is that you can play the entirety of it against other players, and you would not be missing much if you're not into PvE. You get gold, tons of knowledge for leveling up, and many other rewards from these 2 game modes, but let's first separate the two. What is PvP? Well, technically, sPvP, or structured player versus player, is the 5v5, 3v3, or 2v2 conquest or deathmatch game mode where you go into a short round of playing against other players. It's a simple concept, and the only thing stopping you from excelling here is your understanding of the other classes and their abilities. You can literally play this butt naked at level 3 because you're upscaled and all of your stats come from the amulet that you choose before going into matches. There's an entire set of legendary armor and the legendary ring you can get from playing ranked sPvP, so if fast-paced PvP MMOs sound like fun to you, give this a shot from the get-go, no gearing required. World vs. World is a little bit different. Here you need to get to level 80, obtain your preferred gear, and unlock the elite specializations in open world PvE in order to play with optimized stats. You do need to play PvE to get into this game mode, especially if you're thinking of doing it somewhat competitively. But this game mode is kind of like Battlefield. Each of the 3 teams is a different server or cluster of servers, so the server you choose when making your account only matters in this game mode if you want to play with friends. Then you go out and together with your server mates are tasked with conquering the enemy's forts, camps, destroying their supply Brahmin. It's essentially sPvP, but without the structure and very much open world. In a way, it's like those military simulation first-person shooters where 80% of the gameplay is walking, except here you'll be experiencing a few more genocides firsthand. It sort of requires a capable commander or someone who understands the game mode in order to lead and have a decent amount of fun and get good rewards, but it's worth a try even if it doesn't sound like something you'd be playing, especially when this game mode also has a legendary ring and armor set for playing it for long enough. Oh, and you need a gift of battle from here if you want to craft legendary weapons. And yeah, don't die while roaming. Now that I've mentioned the combat and already shown you enough scenes that include combat in this game, you're probably wondering if it is any good or if it's just flashy for the sake of visuals. Well, biased as I am towards this game, I'm here to say that the combat is indeed fluid and fun. What it's not from the get-go, however, is easy. You need to learn a good few core mechanics in order to be efficient at it. Things like conditions and boons, endurance and dodging, combo fields and combo finishers, and especially in PvE, the Defiance bar are necessary for you to be efficient in this game. I would consider them core pieces of the Guild Wars 2 gameplay experience, although until you get there you need to learn what your skills do. Meticulously reading every little scrap and bit of text there is when it comes to your skill bar and traits, oh my fucking god, the amount of things you need to read in some of the new expansion specs is paramount to your survival. Look, I'd say 80 to 90% of the skills are not animation locked, but when they are, they're strong skills generally speaking. It's fluid, it's fun, and all it takes to be good at maneuvering it all is reading what they all do. Unless you're a mechanist, in which case you have to use skill 2 and auto attack. Still fun for some, but it's at the bottom of the skill requirement pit at the moment. Specializations and traits tie well into these steamboat shenanigans, but most of the time you can net deck a build from Snow Crows or Meta Battle and simply learn how to pilot instead of understanding why they took a certain trait and leave another. Of course, doing this means that you will gladly skip the slow process of learning your own class in order to get to the action quicker, but if it's your thing to try out experimental builds for different game modes or even for solo play, go wild and crazy in this year tab. Besides all these wonderful points I'm making about the game, I have to say that the story oftentimes feels like a teenage Californian girl was tasked with writing it. Did you really need to put the word "literally" at the end of this fractal or at the start of this dungeon?
We're literally going to get to the bottom of this.
In these characters' lines? Well, no, but you did it anyway. The world and lore are nice and somewhat interesting if you read a little about the things that happened in the first Guild Wars, and a couple of certain plot twists in the game leave you glued to the screen, true, but there's this achievement where you have to redo the entire Living World story for a legendary amulet, and I kid you not when I tell you that I had to take almost a half-year break after that because I was so burnt out on the lame or mostly average writing. Characters would be forgettable if they weren't in every other story instance, and whenever someone dies it doesn't feel too consequential. I get more feels out of listening to the Heart of Thorns soundtrack because I have so many memories there, learning the meta events, how to play Thief, and most important of all, being a baboon and talking about inane things with other players. When people say the Guild Wars 2 community is super friendly, they mean it. Unless they're newcomers who recently quit WoW, they will help you even if they give you the low effort answer of, I don't know, just /wiki it. I love this game more than anything. If you've ever clicked on my profile on Discord, you know that I play it long and often. I've probably even spent more than I should have on gems on this game, not because I have an addiction, but because I believe that the developers should be supported for future content in this amazing game that they've created. As Mallow on Twitch once said, no one ever quits Guild Wars 2, they just take a break and then come back later. This game is great, and you're great too. Thanks for watching this to the end, scrubbers. Like and sub as the big numbers make my baboon brain refrain from lobbing poop at you. Follow my Instagram and join the Discord for shitposts and updates respectively. Here's an excerpt from my Insta, and have a clear sea.